Rhea walked into the house, holding her lilac bag in her hand, the guards greeting her as she entered. As soon as she entered the house, the sight of angry Jason greeted her. He was standing in the middle of the living room and glaring at her with angry eyes. "Who dropped you off?" he asked, his voice sounding strong and threatening. The voice was meant to scare her, but it succeeded in making her angry. "Why does it matter?" she asked, shrugging. She really didn't have the patience to argue, as she was tired of all the talk during the dinner. "Of course it matters. It matters when my wife decides not to follow me out when I am leaving. It matters when her boyfriend drops her off," he shouted at her, his loud voice making her wince. Rhea didn't expect that he would be angry about the dinner. She had meant nothing by it, but didn't want to stay with him why he was so angry. "So you have nothing to say, huh? You have nothing to say for yourself?" Jason taunted. Rhea was slowly reaching her limit, and it took all of her willpower not to just scream at him. "Of course you don't. I bet you fucked your boyfriend before you returned," he said, and Rhea gasped at his audacity. "But I know he left you wanting. He couldn't make you come the way I do, and even as he touched you, I bet you thought of me the entire while," he said again slowly. The fact that he was insinuating that she was cheating on him made her mad, angry, livid even. "I respect the vows I made when I got married to you. I am not you, Jason. I won't cheat," she shouted back at him. Their voices had become loud, and she was sure that they had started getting the attention of the staff. "Oh, so now you respect marriage. You didn't seem to think twice when you pinned that child on me. I am even sure it was your boyfriend's," he said, and Rhea felt her face grow hot with anger. She felt livid. She had absolutely no idea what he was going on about anymore. She thought he had accepted the baby, only for him to start saying she was pinning it on him. Her hand seemed to move on its own accord as it landed hard on his cheeks, making a loud clapping sound as her hand collided with his face. Her palm burned, but the furious look on Jason's face was worth it. "You little," he said, not completing his sentence before pressing his lips over hers in a hard, punishing kiss. Rhea had not expected it, but as soon as she got to her senses, she pushed Jason back, but he refused to budge. He basically moved her to the wall, sufficiently blocking her. She decided that since he did want to stop that she wouldn't respond, and so she clamped her lips closed as he rubbed his tongue over them, requesting for entrance. Before she knew it, he put his hand on her breast, not breaking contact with her lips. She then pushed his hand away, knowing that she knew it was very close to breaking, knowing that if she let him touch her, that she would not be able to leave, that her resolve would break, and she responded readily into the kiss. Jason simply held her two hands captive in hers in a tight grip. He was ready to follow through. Heck put his hand back roughly at her breast. It was as though he was trying to punish her. He then strongly pinched her nipple, causing her to gasp. As she opened her mouth out of impulse, he pushed his warm tongue into her mouth. "Stay strong, Rhea. Stay strong," Rhea said to herself. But all the chanting was useless, as she couldn't even stay unresponsive anymore. She delved herself into the kiss, kissing him back as roughly as he was doing to her. And even when he released her hands from his grip, she didn't push him away. Instead, she put her hands on his body, removing his black silk shirt from his dress pants, and her hands under his warm skin and strong muscles. His hand had somehow made it from her breast to under her dress. She was basically creaming her panties in anticipation of what was to come. She hadn't been touched there since she got pregnant, and she had read that it was more heightened. She couldn't wait to try. What started out as an argument in the living room had turned out to be a full-blown makeout session. When Jason's long and heavenly fingers pushed away the barrier of her panties and began to rub circles on her swollen clit, that she realized what was about to happen. She was about to have sex in the living room, and they had maids that could easily walk in on them. "Jason," she said, her sound muffled by his hair. His mouth had left hers, and he was now sucking on her neck, no doubt leaving marks. "Yes," he said, at the same time pinching her clit. She yelped at the sweet pleasure pain. She was tempted to keep her mouth shut and enjoy her husband's body right then and there. "Bedroom," she managed to choke out. He seemed surprised, like he didn't know there weren't in the bedroom. Rhea was scared she had killed the mood, and that he may not want to continue any longer. But before she could beg him to touch her anywhere, he scooped her up bridal style and carried her in the direction of his room. Jason carried his pregnant wife in his arms to his bedroom. Back at the dinner, he couldn't explain the type of disappointment he felt when she refused to leave with him. He felt more alone than ever, like no one was on his side. Coupled with seeing his mother, the way she changed husbands, breaking families in the process, annoyed him. He was ashamed to say that she was his mother. Their family was the longest she had stayed with, and she left when Celia was 5. Jason was 7 by then, and had remembered how Celia would cry, not understanding why she didn't have a mommy. Then their so-called mother would come for family dinners, with an entirely different family. She would get Celia's hopes up, and his little sister would keep on thinking that this would be the time that she stayed. She never did. She always kept on coming and going. Many people didn't know that, but Celia had always felt that it was her fault that their mother left, and whenever she was around she would try her best to please her. That was actually the main reason why she dated Nate, because their mother wanted her to. It hurt Jason that his mother had broken his sister, and all those memories came flooding back. It so turned out that his mother's new son was Rhea's ex-boyfriend. When Jason got home, his mind started cooking up various scenarios. He could imagine Rhea going back to her boyfriend, leaving him alone, and then she showed up with her bloody boyfriend dropping her off. He was mad, furious, and jealous. He wanted her to feel the pain that he did, and so he spewed out nonsense from his mouth. He couldn't show her how happy he was that she disputed his claims, but when he talked about the baby, she seemed to have lost it and delivered a strong hit to his face. The kiss was to punish her, to show her who was boss, and that it was not okay to slap your husband. But somehow the kiss ended up in being more. Once he tasted her, he couldn't get enough. He wanted her, all of her. He carried her and laid her on her feet. The pregnancy had changed her a lot, and not just the swollen belly. Her breasts had become even bigger and she seemed more responsive. Rhea didn't waste time and pushed in for a kiss. He chuckled at her eagerness. To think that she didn't want to kiss him a few minutes ago. She seemed to feel the chuckle as she withdrew from the kiss, a knowing smile playing on her lips. He took his time to look at her, to really look at her. Her lips were swollen and red from his onslaught. He could see some hickeys forming on her neck. Her hair was disheveled because of his fingers, and he could recognize the lust-filled expression on her face. He could feel his pants get even tighter and he struggled to adjust himself. God, she was beautiful, he thought. He stared at her as she slowly started to remove her dress, in a seductive manner, showing her black lace bra, which didn't seem to hold her breasts as they overthrew from them. She then shimmed out of the dress, showing her matching panties that were under the dress. He stared at her swollen stomach, pride beaming in him as he thought it through. It was his child that was in that belly, his own child. Rhea then put her hands over her bra-clad breasts, kneading them over the lace fabric. When she let out the first moan, Jason almost came in his pants. Without wasting time, he rid himself of his clothing, leaving only his boxers on, before going to engulf his wife's body in a hug, giving her already rosy lips a plunging kiss, sucking and nipping. They both tumbled into his bed, where he settled above her. He reached under her to remove the hook of her lacy bra, thereby baring her two full, beautiful breasts, whose light brown nipples have already puckered up for him. He felt like staring all night at her beautiful body all night, but it had been so long for him, and he was sure that if he did that he would come in his boxers. So he dived in, covering her left puckered nipple with his mouth, sucking and nipping, while palming the other breasts. He smiled as he heard her mewls and moans. He moved his mouth from one breast, releasing the nipple in a loud pop, before moving his attention to the other. Meanwhile his hand went down, trailing over her enlarged stomach, feeling it lovingly, before moving down to his destination. Without any warning, he pushed his finger inside her, and she let out a surprised gasp, followed by moan. She felt so tight and wet, she was basically clenching on his finger. He added two others before pumping them in and out in a rapid motion, his mouth still moving on her breasts by her moans and pleasure-filled cries. He could tell that she was getting close to her peak. He grazed his teeth lightly over her nipple, and she came all over his fingers in a loud cry. He then took off his boxers and placed the tip of his cock at her entrance, slowly pushing his entire length into her. She made a sound of pleasure as he began to pump into her. Fixing his mouth on hers, she met each of his thrusts with her own, moving in rhythm. She seemed frustrated by his rhythm and by her body movements. He knew she wanted him to go faster, to hit her harder. He didn't need more encouragement as he pumped in and out of her, fast and animalistic, before realizing in hard spurts inside her. He slowly extracted himself from her and settled beside her on the bed. Jason woke up to start. Looking around, he realized that it wasn't morning yet. He smiled as he remembered the night before, the one that he spent with his wife. He looked at her. She seemed asleep, but was mumbling something in her sleep. He wondered if she was dreaming of him. His mind went back to their first night together. She had tried to give him a blowjob in the morning, but was cut short by Brittany. An idea crossed his mind. He got up and straddled her, putting his head down her legs, and started leaving small peppered kisses up her tights, nipping a little until he reached his destination. He put his nose into her sex, drowning in her exquisite smell, before giving her sex one lick. She jolted under him and moaned loudly. He looked up and saw that she was still asleep. She most probably felt that she was still dreaming. He continued his onslaught, taking her swollen clit into his mouth, sucking strongly. He could feel her legs buckling. He could see her hole leaking her juices. He then lapped them up, putting his tongue into her tight sex. "Jason, oh my God, I am almost there," she screamed, before releasing her juices all over his face and lips. He just smiled as he lapped them up. He moved up, coming face to face with her. She looked shy and seemed like she was hiding her face. "Come on, Rhea, look at me," he said. "That was awesome," he continued as he positioned himself on her. "Are you ready for more?" he asked, and she nodded. That time he took his time, savoring her and making sure he committed every part of her to his memory. He touched her as though he was saying goodbye, and by the time it was over, she had come 5 times in total. Both exhausted, they went to sleep. Rhea woke up with the feeling of a warm body wrapped around hers. She snuggled deeper into the hug of her husband, smiling to herself as she remembered the events of the night before. She felt sore, but it was a good type. Her most private parts were tingling, and she felt alive in some places that she wasn't even sure existed. She just wanted to lie in his arms forever and not think about the future and pretend like she knew what was going on in hers and Jason's relationship, but her overactive mind wouldn't let her. She couldn't tell what that night meant to Jason. She had no idea if anything had changed, or if it was still the same old thing. She wasn't sure she hated him anymore, but the big question was what he felt about her. She didn't know if he still hated her, or if he wasn't still ready to be a father. Oh shit. I am going to be late, she thought, as she suddenly remembered that she had an appointment. She turned to face Jason to wake him up, wanting to inform him of the appointment, but instead she got lost in staring at his handsome face. Rhea couldn't actually believe that she was married to the Greek god, with his perfect facial structure, his extremely kissable lips and his beautiful blue eyes that were enclosed by his eyelids. He looked so calm and simple as he was asleep. He looked so innocent as he hadn't opened up his mouth to spew up his nonsense. She played with the few strands of hair on his lean chest, twisting them in her hand. "Jason," she said, tapping on his chest. She had decided that she couldn't stare at him forever. "Hug," he said, yawning before sitting up on the bed. "Good morning," she said, smiling, loving the way he smiled back at her and lowered his head to give her a kiss, which she quickly diverted, making him stare at her, a confused look on his face. "You, morning breath," she said, explaining. He seemed relieved as he let out a chuckle. "Well then go on and brush your teeth," he said, shooting her out of the bed. "Or better still, let us save time and water and take a bath together," he suggested, wiggling his eyebrows, and she smiled at his cheekiness. Wait, she said, not wanting to be distracted before she told him about the appointment. "What is it?" he asked, standing up from the bed and walking towards her, putting his hands around her waist. "Well, I want to tell you something, but you have to promise not to get mad," she said. To be frank, she was afraid of his response, as she had been hurt by his words the previous times when she had talked about the pregnancy. "I promise, just say what you want so that we can get on with our bath," he said. "Well, today is my 5-month scan, and I want you to come along," she said carefully, searching his eyes for any reaction, but his expression remained blank. It was as though he didn't want her to know what he was thinking. "I am sorry I asked. I know you said you weren't ready." She started apologizing immediately. "I will go," he said, cutting her short. "What?" she asked. It was as though her ears were deceiving her. "I'll go," he repeated, and she smiled happily, jumping on him, at least as well as her body will let her. For that singular moment from the onset of her marriage, she felt happy. Rhea laid down at the slightly uncomfortable hospital bed, the flowing top that she had worn raised up to reveal her enlarged stomach. As the female doctor, the one that had been smiling since she entered into the hospital with Jason and had corrected her use of her maiden name, put the cold gel on her bare stomach, she couldn't help but shiver in nervousness. The doctor had called it the anomaly scan. She had said that its main purpose was to check if the baby had any abnormalities. Although she didn't want her child at first, but she couldn't help but pray that he was fine. She wanted the child that grew in her stomach to be fine. Over the months, she was beginning to fall in love with him. "Your baby has grown a lot over the few months," the doctor commented as she showed them the vision on the screen. "The baby was bigger than it was the last time." "Well, are your baby's hands and feet, his little fingers and toes," the doctor continued, showing her the parts of her baby's body. Rhea smiled as she looked at the picture in front of her. It was even more real than before. She was actually going to have a child. She could feel Jason standing up from his chair and walking close to her as he held her hand. She smiled and she felt like her child would have a family. "Would you like to know the sex?" the doctor asked, and Rhea looked up to Jason. They had not really talked about anything related to the baby, and neither had she thought of the sex, but unconsciously she wanted a girl. Jason shrugged as she looked at him for his opinion, so she just said, "We want it to be a surprise." Okay, that is all right. Would you want to hear your baby's heartbeat? The doctor asked, but her question was directed to Jason. He hadn't heard the heartbeat before, but Rhea had loved listening to it. Yes, he said. He was looking so husbandly and was acting nothing like the man that had denied the fatherhood of his child. Soon enough the familiar thumping sound filled the room, but this time it was stronger than the first. Your baby's heartbeat is now stronger. It was as though the woman was reading her thoughts. She started cleaning the gel of her stomach, using a wet wipe, before Rhea dropped her shirt and followed her to her office. She sat alongside Jason in the doctor's office, the both of them staring at her as she flipped through papers and scans. Everything seems to be in order. Hope you are taking your vitamins, she asked again. Rhea just sighed. The doctor was even worse than a mother. Yes, ma'am. Are your feet getting swollen already? She asked yet again. Rhea was half sure that not all doctors asked such personal questions, but she answered anyway. Just a little. Okay, I will send a list of pregnancy books to your email, along with the time of your next scan. I have a question, Jason said, shocking Rhea. Go on, ask. The doctor said, smiling. She seemed so happy that day. Rhea couldn't possibly think of a question that Jason would have to ask. She was the one pregnant, not him. Is it safe for us to have sex in the meantime? He asked, a knowing smirk on the face. Rhea felt like melting into the chair. She almost died of embarrassment on seeing the smile on the doctor's face. Well, of course it is safe. It isn't a problem till very late in the pregnancy, when the problem is discomfort, the doctor said eagerly. Thanks, Doc. What was that all about? She whispered and screamed at him as they exited the hospital. What? He asked, feigning ignorance. Stop acting coy. You know what I am talking about. Why did you ask her that? Now the poor woman probably has a vision of us having sex ingrained into her memory. Jason just laughed at her. Don't worry about the poor woman. She is most probably asked those questions every day. She is a doctor, he said. Yeah, but it was embarrassing, she said, carefully entering into the car. That's what you are worried about, not the poor woman, he mocked, a teasing smile on his face. Just drive me to the mall, she said as he started the engine of his Bugatti with a low purr. And drive slowly, she warned. Can't you go another time? I have a meeting with my agent in an hour. The thought of Jason meeting the rude Amazonian goddess made Rhea's blood boil. Jason, come on, let's go shopping. We have absolutely nothing ready for the baby, and we are having her in 4 months, Rhea said to her husband, pleading with him. Her? I thought you didn't want to know the sex, or did the doctor lady tell you secretly? He asked. No, I just want a girl. What do you want? She asked purely out of curiosity. Well, I don't know. It will be cool to have a daughter though. Have that daddy and baby girl thing, he said after thinking for a while. So shopping? She asked again, a pleading look on her face. Fine. This is so cute, Rhea said for the umpteenth time, picking up a pink bootie which had frills around it. They had gotten to the mall almost an hour ago, and Rhea had dragged him around every baby store, wanting to buy anything and everything. Don't you think you should get neutral colors, since we don't know the sex of the baby yet? He asked her as she picked another pink onesie. What do you mean? Rhea asked, and he gestured to the shopping cart that looked like Barbie had thrown up on it. We aren't even sure we are having a girl, he said. Fine. She threw a singular sky blue onesie inside the cart before moving on. Oh my gosh, these are so beautiful. She gushed again at a pair of dresses, which were big enough for 4-year-olds. Rhea, you can't possibly be thinking of buying those. It seemed that his words hit a nerve as she turned back and shot him a hard glare, which effectively shut him up. She then proceeded to buy the dress, along with everything that a child would need from 0 to 5 years. He was pretty sure that they wouldn't fit inside his car. When she finally left the baby store and he thought that it was all over, she branched into the maternity clothing store. "Rhea, aren't you done yet?" he asked. "I have shopped for the baby, but I don't have clothes for myself," she cried out, and Jason just rolled his eyes at her. For all the time that he knew her, she hadn't worn a clothing twice. "I have seen your closet, Rhea. The clothes there could clothe a small country. Well, because of you, they don't fit," she shouted. He could see tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. He could tell that she was about to cry. "Okay, all right, I am sorry. You can continue shopping. Let me just call Raymond to shop with you and drive you home." She looked at him with a confused expression on her face. He then realized that she didn't know who Raymond was. "Raymond is one of the bodyguards. He is actually the head guard," he said. "I don't know him. Why don't you want to shop with me?" she asked again. "Rhea, I told you I have a meeting. I am late," he said again, getting frustrated. "I am almost done. Just a few dresses, I promise," she said, giving him the puppy dog look, and he sighed, letting her lead the way. Just a few dresses turned into another shopping spree. He wished she had driven so that he could go, but he couldn't leave her stranded. But he couldn't deny that Rhea was fun to be with, especially when she modeled the dresses for him. "Okay, all done," she said. "Finally. Now I am hungry," she said, rubbing her enlarged stomach. "We will go to a drive-through," he said, basically pushing her into the car after all their belongings had been loaded into the trunk of the car and some into the back seat. "Jason, we need a baby-safe car, like an SUV," she said out of the blue as he tried his best not to speed, so that she didn't throw up on the carpet. "An SUV?" he asked. He couldn't imagine himself driving that. "Well, yes, you can't possibly think of driving a child inside this car," she said, and he decided to keep his mouth shut as he parked in the drive-thru of the Chinese restaurant that Rhea had begged him to come before picking up Isabella's call. "Where the hell are you?" she shrieked into the phone. He had seen her numerous missed calls on his phone after the shopping spree and had picked it up when he could. "I'll be there in a few." "Well, the representatives from the brand are waiting, so you better have a good explanation," she said before disconnecting the call. "Okay, Rhea, you got what you need, right?" "Yes." "Then let's go. Please just stay in the car. I will be back in a few," Jason said, and Rhea frowned at him. She looked like she was about to say no. He had parked in front of his office. He had to bring Rhea with him because there was no time. "I want to come in," she whined. He was already frustrated at her, and he had a meeting to catch. "Rhea, stop behaving like a child, and please just stay here," he said, exasperated. The look of hurt that appeared on her face made him wish he could take his words back, and for a moment he felt she would refuse to stay, but she simply nodded her head. He took her nod as a sign of affirmation and left her, silently praying that she stayed there. Rhea sat alone in Jason's car, using her fingers to tap lightly on any surface she could find. She was bored. She didn't want to agree to Jason asking her to stay in his car, but he had acted like it was so important, and so for that reason she just nodded her head and stayed. She was still curious though. She still wanted to know how the inside of his office looked. She still wanted to know the people he worked with. Without thinking too much about it, she came out of the car, solidly locking it behind her, wiping her sweaty hands on her black leggings, and with her head held high she walked into the building. At first the number of people she saw inside scared her. She had been seeing people going in and out while she was still inside the car, but she had never felt that they would be so many. As she stood in the midst of the crowd, it occurred to Rhea that she didn't know where exactly Jason's office was. She looked around to ask someone, but none of them seemed even relatively approachable. They all looked like they were having an audition or something. Well, an audition for models. With a sigh, she randomly picked a direction and started going that way. "Ma'am, please, you are not allowed in there," a cheerful voice said, as she was about to open a random door in search of Jason. "Oh, may I help you with something?" the round and short woman asked in her cheery voice, most probably hearing the frustration in hers. "Please, I do need help. I am trying to find Jason Wheatus' office," she said. The woman eyed her skeptically, and Rhea had a feeling that people, most especially women, were always looking for Jason. "I am his wife," she said out of desperation, badly wanting the woman to show her the way. The woman just raised an eyebrow at her. She clearly thought Rhea was lying, and Rhea couldn't blame her. "Please, my boss will be very angry if I let you in. Just come out, please," the woman said, trying to peacefully lead her out of the building. "I am pregnant with his child." She tried to reason again. The woman just shook her head at Rhea and brought out her phone from her bag, most likely to call security. Without thinking too much, Rhea dashed in the nearest office, hoping that Jason was inside. Well, she was sorely disappointed as a pair of unfamiliar eyes met hers. "Well, almost." She heaved a sigh as she sighted Rory's husband and Jason's best friend Nate. She had no inkling as to what he would be doing there, and truthfully she didn't care. She was just happy that she would have a chance to see Jason, hopefully. "Nate." "Rhea, what are you doing here?" he asked, confused. The round and cherry-looking woman had already come into the office, with two scary-looking security guards behind her, most likely to throw her out. "I came with Jason. He said he had a meeting. Please just tell them to leave," she said to Nate in a voice that didn't even sound like hers. It sounded small and minute. She knew that if she had been in that exact situation 3 months prior, she would have screamed at the woman. Hell, she even screamed at someone the day before. She had no idea why the pregnancy was messing with her brain. "She is with Jason," Nate said simply to the woman. She opened her mouth slightly, and it seemed like she wanted to argue, but she thought it through and just kept quiet, leaving the room with the other 2 guards. "So where is Jason's office?" she asked immediately as the woman left. "I was in a meeting, Rhea. I am still in a meeting," he said, gesturing to the other men, who just sat, watching the entire scene unfold. "You can take her, Nate. We will wait," one of the men in business suits said, and the others nodded in affirmation. Rhea felt so giddy that she could start dancing, and Nate grudgingly took her to the elevator. "When you get to the 8th floor, it is the first office you will see, and it is his agent's office," he said, not even waiting for her to reply before turning and leaving. But Rhea didn't care about his grumpiness. She had gotten what she wanted. The elevator ride was short, and immediately she got out she could hear familiar raised voices. "You don't have to do anything for her. You are not obliged to take her for an appointment. It is arranged marriage, Jason, and we had a meeting. It could have waited," Isabella shouted, and Rhea felt her blood boil in anger. She couldn't believe that Isabella was telling Jason not to come for her appointment, that he should let her go for her appointments alone. It also hurt that Jason said nothing. "You bitch!" Rhea screamed, attracting attention to herself as she entered the office. Both Jason and Isabella turned to look at her with shocked looks on their faces. "How can you say that my husband shouldn't come for his baby's appointment?" she screamed, pointing a finger into Isabella's chest. Isabella didn't even look scared as she threw Jason a glance. The relaxed look on her face made Rhea even more angry, and so before Isabella could even see it coming, she landed a heavy slap on her face. She was about to do more when she felt a pair of hands raise her up from the ground and carry her into the elevator. She could see a pair of businessmen in suits looking at the both of them. The elevator ride was tense, and she could basically feel the anger seeping out of Jason's body. She stared at her feet, not wanting to turn back and see the raw anger in his eyes. As the doors of the elevator opened, he fixed his hand around her arm in a tight grip, basically dragging her out. Rhea could feel tears sting her eyes, but she willed them not to fall. She knew that the spot would bruise later. "I told you to sit in the fucking car, but that you couldn't even do," he said, basically spitting the words out, and she felt the sharp sting in her chest as a result of his words. "I am going back inside, Rhea. This time please just stay," he continued. The anger in his voice had reduced, and she could hear something that seemed like fear. She couldn't even fathom what Jason would be afraid of. It was then that she noted that Jason wasn't just angry because of only Isabella. There was something else. But the knowledge of that didn't make her heart ache less. He had succeeded in ruining all their progress with his painful words. This time she sat in the car. She had no intention of being shouted at, and when he finally came into the car, she said nothing to him, looking out the window the entire ride, while rubbing on the bruise that was on her hand. Immediately they got into the house. She slammed the door behind him and quickly went up to her room, locking the door behind her, and she let out all the tears that she had been holding back. Rhea woke up feeling swollen. It didn't help that she had cried herself to sleep, and that her eyes were swollen shut. Her hands and feet felt huge. Her belly seemed to have grown overnight along with every other part of her body. She felt like she had grown twice her size. With great effort she managed to pull herself out of her very comfortable bed and to her wall mirror. As she stared at her reflection, tears started dropping from her eyes. She looked terrible. Her hair was sticking out in all directions. Her eyeballs were bloodshot red, and her eyelids swollen. Her nose was red and the rest of her face was swollen, her cheeks huge. She looked down. Her breasts, which felt extremely sore, were undeniably larger, and her stomach had started developing a few white stretch marks. She felt undeniably ugly. At that thought, tears had started rushing down her cheeks. She felt the baby move as she had begun a few weeks back. But this time, it was not as subtle and much more pronounced as she felt a sharp sting against her ribs. Ouch! She screamed. She knew what had happened. The baby had kicked. The doctor had told her to expect that sooner or later. The new development could not have come at a worse time, as the kick only reminded her of how she would expand in the next few months. She had no idea why, but the tears seemed so easy to flow. It was as though there was absolutely no resistance. She cried and cried and cried, full-blown loud cries with snot coming out of her nose. And then suddenly she didn't feel like crying anymore. Her tears had dried up and her feeling of sorrow was taken over by anger, red-hot anger, and it was directed at the person who had put her in the situation in the first place. Not caring about her appearance, nor about the fact that she hadn't even brushed her teeth, she stood up in her overly large white tee and boxers, marching down the hall to Jason's room. She could feel the stares of the maids that she passed as she walked down the hall. It might have been due to that fact that she wasn't even walking, but rather marching down the hall in determined steps. It might have also been because of her hair that was flying. As she got to Jason's room, without wasting any time, she knocked hard on his door. She was half sure that he was still inside, as it was just past 6 in the morning. When he didn't answer, she knocked again, this time even harder, and again until she was sure that she was rattling the hinges of the door. "Would you fucking stop it?" Jason growled. She was sure that he had figured it was her, as no one else would knock his door in that manner. "Not until you come out," she replied angrily, raising her fist to the door to continue her knocking. "What is it?" he said as he finally opened up the door. Rhea couldn't help but feel jealous at how effortlessly handsome he was looking. She had woken him up from his sleep, but he looked as handsome as a god, while she, on the other hand, looked like a wild animal. "What is it? Were you crying?" he said, asking the two questions at once, as though he noticed her red-rimmed eyes. "This is your fault, all of it. It is all your fault," she shouted at him. She could see him wince at the sound of her voice and look confused at her words. "What did I do?" he asked, sighing. "You got me pregnant. You put a fucking human being inside my stomach, and now I am fat and ugly," she screamed. The tears that had disappeared were slowly making their way up her throat again. She could basically hear the sob in her voice. Jason looked like he would rather be anywhere else but listening to her cry, but he did something that she didn't expect. He hugged her, putting her into his arms. He rubbed small circles on her back, making her cry even more. "You're right, it is my fault. You don't deserve this. I am sorry," he apologized before carrying her, fat and all, into his room, bridal style. She snuggled deeper into him, enjoying his familiar scent that was not blocked by the cologne that prompted vomit. She forgot all of his hurtful words the day before. She forgot about the fact that he had put a bruise on her. At that moment she felt happily married. After he had taken her into his room and let her cry her eyes out on his shirt, he had prepared a bath for her. Rhea didn't remember the last time she had been bathed by someone. It was most probably when she was still a baby, but Jason bathed her. With all the drama of the morning, she felt weak and tired. She was surprised that the bath was nothing sexual, but it felt like so much more. It felt like they connected on another level, like two souls meeting. After bathing her and washing her hair, he dried her up and dressed her in one of his big hoodies. It felt so comfortable, and she had never felt so pampered. He treated her like a doll, and she reveled in it. He then went downstairs and came back with the most mouth-watering breakfast. The scrambled eggs melted in her mouth, and the bacon was marvelous. "It tastes so good," she moaned as he came out of the bathroom. His stomach was glistening with drops of water, and his curly hair looked wonderful as it was wet. "Really?" he asked while drying his hair. "Yes, it is wonderful. It is nice to know that you like my cooking," he said offhandedly, and she almost spit out her tea. "You made this?" she asked, not still believing. "Yet, you will have to cook for me one day," he said, smiling, and Rhea felt like burying her head in sand out of embarrassment. She knew that there was no way that he would know that she couldn't cook to save her life, and so he was just playing around. "Yes, sure," she said. "Are you going somewhere?" she asked, changing the topic, as he picked up a red hoodie and a pair of jeans with a pair of Timberlands. "Yeah, I have a shot in a few," he said. She was about to ask if she could go with him, when she remembered what had happened the day before. She did not have any intentions of being shouted at, and so she kept quiet. "What is it?" he asked as she got quiet. "Nothing," she shrugged, and he heaved a sigh. "Rhea, I am sorry about yesterday. I truly am. I overreacted. I just don't want the paparazzi to start stalking you, or something. They don't know you are associated with me, at least not yet. Anyone can leak the news that we are married," he explained. She could understand his point, but didn't like the fact that he didn't want people to know that they were married. "Is it that you are ashamed of me? Is it 'cause I am not a fellow model or something?" she asked him, not able to hold her tongue, tears yet again threatening to fall out of her eyes. "It is not that, Rhea. I promise you, It is nothing of that sort. You will get it soon enough. I will be back from my shoot soon enough," he said, assuring her, before placing his lips lightly upon hers, sweetly kissing her, before pulling away with a groan. Rhea smiled and laughed to herself as Jason left. She was not sure what his behavior meant, whether it meant that he was ready to be a father, or even a husband. All she knew was that for the first time in her marriage, she felt like a wife. As Jason left for work, Rhea picked up her phone to call Rory. It had been so long since they talked and she was dying to hear from her best friend. She got up, albeit reluctantly, from Jason's comfortable bed and made her way to her room, feeling so much better than she did when she left the room. Laying on her bed, she picked up her phone and dialed Rory's number. Her best friend picked up after the first ring. "Hello, pregnant bitch," Rory squealed, her voice sounding high-pitched and happy. "Hi, Rory," Rhea said, smiling at Rory's enthusiasm. "So you just forgot me?" Rory asked in her overdramatic fashion. "No, it's just that I have been a little busy, but right now I am bored," Rhea cried. "There is no way I can let my pregnant best friend be bored." Rory to the rescue. "I will be there in a few," Rory said, and Rhea squealed. It had been a while since she had seen her friend, and she needed to fill her in on all that had been happening in her life. True to her words, Rory was in Rhea's home in the next 30 minutes. Rory was wearing a yellow summer dress that flowed from under her breasts, showing her small bump. Her friend looked gloriously pregnant. "You look beautiful, Rory," Rhea complimented. "So do you," she replied, before studying her properly. "Isn't that Jason's hoodie you are wearing?" she asked, and Rhea felt heat creep up her cheeks. She had half a mind to lie and say it was for one of her brothers, but she decided not to. She had nothing to worry about. After all, Jason was her husband. "Yes, it is," she admitted to her friend. "Oh my God, the two of you are so cute," Rory gushed as Rhea led her to the patio. "So what has been going on?" Rory asked Rhea. Rhea, whom had been looking desperately for someone to tell all her problems and confusions to, immediately started spilling. She told Rory about everything, well, leaving all the details about the dinner and finding out that Richard was actually Jason's half-brother, of being jealous of Isabella, of defending Jason against Richard, of how they ended up in each other's beds, of how he was so attentive at her 5-month scan, and how he had taken her shopping. She began to frown when she told Rory about the day before, when Jason took her to his workplace after her scan, her face tightening in pain when she remembered how hard he had gripped her hand. "He fucking hurt you," Rory screamed, attracting the attention of the workers around. "SH," Rhea screamed, holding her forefinger to her lips. "How can you tell me to keep quiet? Is that what you want to do? Keep quiet as he keeps on hurting you?" Rory asked, and Rhea felt the strong urge to defend Jason. It wasn't like that, not really. He was angry and he apologized and made up for it. This morning he was so sweet, she said wistfully, remembering how nice Jason had been during the early hours of the day. "I can't believe you are actually defending him," Rory said, exasperated. Rhea could tell how it all looked in her eyes, like Jason was actually abusing her, and she wasn't saying anything about it. But Rhea also knew that it was more than that. She had been severely upset the night before, but he had explained his reasons and she believed him. "Let's FaceTime RM, find out what is going on in that crazy girl's life," Rhea said, wanting to change the topic. It seemed to work as Rory's face lit up, and she immediately brought out her phone to call RM. Rory stared at her phone, shock registered on her face. It seemed she had seen something surprising, and Rhea knew that her friend hadn't called RM. "What is it?" Rhea asked out of curiosity, and Rory gave her a slight pitiful look before handing the phone to her. Rhea gazed at her friend's phone, staring at a blur picture of her and Jason coming out of the hospital after her scan. The Playboy's Baby Mama was the name of the article. There were several other pictures of her and Jason, some of them while they shopped for baby things, and one when she attacked Isabella in the office. It was obvious by the articles and the comments that the writer didn't know that her and Jason were married. Some comments called her a skank. Some said she wanted to destroy the relationship Jason had with his manager. Some said she was just trapping him with a child that was not his. And then she couldn't read anymore. She felt tears cloud her vision. Her entire life was on the internet for the world to freely view. She couldn't believe that all those moments she had with Jason were tainted by the paparazzi that couldn't mind their own business. She started to see what Jason was sheltering her against. Her life was basically normal before. Though her father was rich and a businessman, he wasn't one for the media, and he only used them for important purposes. Her and her brothers had been shielded from the media from when they were children, and it was then that she felt the impact of being married to a popular model. "Relax, Rhea. You will be fine," Rory said, hugging her. "I should have never come out from the car," she cried, even if she knew that Rory would be lost. "It is not your fault." "It is," Jason said, "not to leave the car, and I thought he was ashamed of me. It was the people in his office that had photographed us. They might have had their suspicions ever since, but I made sure they knew." She continued crying. "You are pregnant, Rhea. Think about your child. You are not supposed to be stressing yourself. Think about your child," Rory advised, and Rhea tried to listen. She really did. But she kept thinking and thinking about how it would change her life, about how she wouldn't be able to come out in the public without shielding her face. She continued thinking on how many girls now hated her for taking their favorite crush away. She groaned again as she thought of how the people at her father's company would see her. Everyone knew the father of her child. "I can basically see the clogs in your head turning, Rhea. Stop overthinking. It is not as bad as you are making it out to be," Rory said. "It is too. You don't understand." "I do understand. Sooner or later the media will get tired of you and will move on to another person." Her friend tried to reason, but Rhea wasn't having any of it. She picked up the phone again, looking for related posts. There were several others. The titles ranged from "The Playboy Finally Taken" to "Gold Digger" or "A New Lover." Looking at the posts did nothing to calm her nerves. As the comments looked even worse, she was trying to look at the good side. But there was no good side whatsoever to look at. All nice comments insulted her for wasting her life on a man that would never love her, and the terrible ones called her a hoe. Through the many comments that she read, she found out that Isabella and Jason were having a relationship. At least the media thought they had one. She had always suspected that they had something together because of their close relationship, but somehow seeing it with her own eyes, she didn't believe it. She simply couldn't. "I am going to lie down," she said to her friend. She was already feeling a headache working its way into her head. As she stood up, she felt a dizzy spell. She could barely hear her friend shouting for help, and slowly everything went black. "I leave for 2 hours and this happens." Rhea could vaguely pick out Jason's angry voice from her tired state. "Don't raise your voice at me." Rhea knew that the other voice belonged to that of her best friend. Rhea was fine until she saw the pictures and posts online. "They are painting her in a terrible light," Rory said. "And that is your fault since everyone somehow thinks you are having an affair with your agent," her best friend accused. The conversation was getting heated and Rhea felt like it was time to let them know that she was awake. But then she couldn't. Firstly, she was too tired to talk, and then she was curious about Jason's relationship with Isabella. "Isabella and I have been friends since high school," She is more like my younger sister than anything, and besides she is engaged." Jason explained, sighing, and Rhea could not help the feeling of happiness that overcame her. She felt so good, knowing that Jason wanted nothing to do with Isabella. Well then, why does the entire world not know that? Rory screamed as the sound reverberated in Rhea's head. "Stop shouting!" she groaned, pushing her head into her pillow. "You're awake," they both said simultaneously. "I will go tell the doctor." Rhea heard Aurora say police before she left the room. "Rhea, are you okay?" Jason asked softly as Rory left. It was as though the old Jason had died at night, and a brand new Jason was born the next morning, because he was being so uncharacteristically caring. "Why are you suddenly being so nice?" she asked, not able to hold back her tongue. Jason looked confused at her question, like he didn't even understand why he was being nice himself. "I have no idea, but you should enjoy it while it lasts," he joked, a teasing smile on his face. "But seriously, I am sorry," he said, his smiling face morphing into a serious mask. He looked slightly guilty. "For what?" "For everything. You are right, it is my fault. I never intended for you to be dragged into my world." Rhea had never seen Jason so remorseful before. She had no idea why it affected him so. He was always so cocky and carefree, a bit arrogant and reeking of power. But right then he reminded Rhea of a little child that lost his toy. He looked broken. "It is fine, I am fine," she said, sitting up, trying to show him how okay she was. At that moment, she would do anything to hear his teasing words. "Jason, it is not your fault. It is the fault of the people who took the pictures and sold it to the press, and they couldn't even take my good side." She tried to joke, but even her half-hearted joke couldn't make him smile. Before she could try and cheer him up more, her doctor walked in. She had her signature smile on, as she went on to take Rhea's temperature and check the baby's heartbeat. "Your wife is fine," the doctor said to Jason, and he heaved a relieved sigh. Rhea wasn't scared as she knew she just fainted. She didn't even see the need for the doctor in the first place. She would have woken up sooner or later. It was just Jason overreacting. "Young lady, your husband and your friend told me what happened. You should remember that you are carrying a child. Your child feels it when you are stressing yourself. You don't need to overthinking," the atypical doctor said, and Rhea just rolled her eyes. She still didn't get why the woman couldn't mind her own business. "Don't forget to always take your vitamins, be hydrated, eat healthily. Your baby is growing even stronger, and he is going to need more food. Your husband said you were complaining about your weight," she said, and Rhea shot Jason a glare, wondering how long she had been out to warrant Jason discussing with the doctor. "Like I said, don't worry. After delivery you can do all of the exercises to burn off all the fat. It is very normal to gain weight during pregnancy," the doctor advised yet again. "Okay. Well, I will leave you two to it," the doctor said, and left Rhea's room, where she was lying comfortably on her bed. "I don't ever see you taking those vitamins that the doctor says you should take," Jason noted, and Rhea frowned at him. It wasn't like he looked after her every day and watched her eat or something. "I take them," she said, rolling her eyes. "Are you sure?" he asked again. Rhea was starting to get annoyed, and she could feel an argument coming. Before she could sarcastically reply her annoying husband, her best friend walked in with a maid behind her, carrying a tray that Rhea was pretty sure contained food. "Food!" she cried, though she had eaten in the morning, but she was so hungry. The moment the maid arranged the food on top of the bed, she started devouring it like a ravenous animal, her mind far away from the pictures, the articles, and the paparazzi. "I have good news," Rory said, sitting down. By that time Jason had excused himself from the room. to enable them to have some girl time. What is it? She asked in between bites of vegetable pasta. Her friend sounded excited and she was curious. Nate and I found out that we are having a boy. Rory shrieked. Oh my God, our children are going to get married. Rhea shouted and Rory looked at her oddly. I thought you didn't find out the sex. Well, I didn't, but I am pretty sure we are having a girl. I am going to name her Poppy, Rhea declared. What if you, by any chance, have a boy? Or what if my son turns out to be gay? Anything can happen. Rory said, shrugging. It was clear that she was against the entire idea. Well, I don't care. We are having babies. Rhea shrieked again. More about babies. It had been 1 whole month since the paparazzi incident. Since then Jason had become overbearing. He had succeeded in locking her inside the house throughout the entire month. She hadn't seen outside.